The 2021 season previews continue today with the Toronto Maple Leafs, a team that every single freaking year they lose in the first round. Now, last year, I said that it is a do or die year for the Maple Leafs, and you know what? It is. The year before that was. Even the year before that, it was too. This year, it's not a do or die season. I mean, you can say it is, but I'm not categorizing it as that. I am categorizing it as a whatever happens season. Whatever they do in the regular season doesn't matter. The playoffs is what matters. Making it past the first round is what matters. That is all that matters. Nothing else means anything. But anyways, if you're new to the channel and you haven't already subscribed yet, please make sure to do that. The Leafs, strangely, I don't get as much views with the Leafs as a lot of people do. I get more views with the Rangers and the Jets and other teams. I don't know if it's the variety of my fan base, but I just have more fandom towards other teams. But Toronto, they usually do pretty well. So let's see how this video does. But anyways, I won't waste any more of your time. Let's get into the preview. So last season for the Toronto Maple Leafs was, in the regular season, pretty good season. 35, 14, and 7 for 77 points. They were 6th in the NHL in the league, and they were first in the Canadian division. And they kind of, I don't want to say they kind of dominated it, but they kind of did it at the same time. And you know what? Although Toronto gets a lot of criticism for, not being able to make it past the first round, I gotta hand it to them. They've done a really good job with building teams lately. And I mean, it's not, you can blame it on Kyle Dubas for the reason why they don't make it past the first round. You can blame it on Sheldon Keefe, Mike Babcock. You can blame it on anyone. You can blame it on Matthews, Marner. Honestly, personally, I would blame it on Matthews and Marner because they did not produce this year, in the playoffs at least. So, just personally, they have a good team. They have a good team. And then it just all falls apart. They lost to the Montreal Canadiens in the first round in 7 games, and it was in such dramatic fashion. Like, the difference between this series and all of the other series is a whole new level of pain for Leafs fans. Last year against the Blue Jackets, it was kind of back and forth. I don't think any team won 2 games in a row. It was like a Toronto win, Columbus win, Toronto win, Columbus win. And then there was like 3-0 deficits that Toronto came back from, 3-0 deficits that Columbus came back to. And then eventually Columbus beat them in Game 5. But that's painful, but they were down in the series and they came back and they still lost. Think about it against Boston. Now, with Boston, they were up. They had so many chances to just run away with the series, and they fucked it over every time. There was Game 1, they won Game 1. They lost Game 2, they won Game 3. They lost Game 4, they won Game 5. They won Game 6, boom, and they're in the second round against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And, I mean, with that Columbus team against that Toronto team, what could have happened? Toronto could have been in the Eastern Conference Finals, arguably. And they could have beat the Canes if, went that way. And against the Blues, if they could have just gotten past Boston. But they can't. Game 7 elimination games haunt them. And in 2019, they were down a bunch of times, and then of course they came back and they still lost. But the difference between all those and this year is that Toronto was up 3-1. They had 3, and I mean 3. They had 3 chances to move on to the second round. 3. If they lost one, sure, you have another chance to win a Game 6. If you lost 2, hey, Game 7 histories aren't that good. But we can still win. Like, I don't understand. And I'm going to say it right here and now, goaltending was not the problem. Goaltending was not. And I know people in my comments when I went live that one day when the first round occurred, people were going off about how Campbell's bad. It's not Campbell. It is not Campbell. Campbell is the complete opposite of the problem. And that's the thing. In every other year, there wasn't problem. That was the problem. The goaltending was always the problem because Kyle Dubas was like, you know what, we'll just keep Frederik Andersen, and finally got rid of him, of course. But what people don't understand is that it's not Campbell's fault. It really isn't. And it's to a degree, it's the defense's fault, but to a degree, it's also the offense's fault for not producing because they had Matthews, Marner, Nylander, so many other depth guys. Like they had Zach Hyman at the time. They had Riley Nash, Nick Foligno, Nick Petan. Like they had guys who could produce, and none of them produced. Well, some of them did, but none of them in that last game produced, and that's a problem. They are not good in elimination games. They're not good in game sevens, and they're not good in that aspect. Yeah, they make me mad. And I'm not even a Leafs fan, and I can't even imagine what they think. Your key departures for the Toronto Maple Leafs consist of a lot of people. Now, they lost Jared McCann to Seattle, and they had Jared McCann for a solid week on the roster. because Pittsburgh, they didn't want to lose him for nothing, so they obviously dealt him away to Toronto for a Hollander and a 7th. You probably could have got more from McCann, but I guess it's close enough. And if they lost McCann to Seattle anyways. So the Leafs lost more. But they got to keep Kerfoot. They got to keep a couple of the guys. So I guess it helps them, but it didn't make sense because he was on the roster for less than a week. And he didn't even play a game. Your departures as well was also Riley Nash, a depth player who I thought they went up too much. He went to Winnipeg, of course. Calle Rosen, I think Vancouver. Nick Foligno, they lost him to Boston. He's now in Boston now when I get to that preview. That's going to be fun. Nick Petan as well. I knew they lost him to Vancouver. They lost David Riddick, who was solely just a backup for Jack Campbell because Anderson was, he got injured hard. Of course, he went to Nashville. They lost Zach Bogosian as well. Bogosian wasn't bad in Toronto, honestly. His years in Buffalo were just crap, but I think that was because Buffalo was crap, period. So, and he's going back to Tampa now again. They also lost Frederik Andersen, and we knew that was coming. I knew he was either going to get traded. He would, part of me feels bad about Andersen. I've talked about Andersen before on the channel. It's one day, when he wins a couple games in a row, it's Anderson, Vezina caliber goaltender. I'm like, what? And then when he loses a couple of games in a row, or lets in some light goals, they're like, oh, Frederik Andersen trade rumors. I'm like, this dude has been criticized so much in Toronto. And I mean, I guess that makes sense because Toronto is the most, media-fed fan base in the entire NHL. I could not process words there for a second. But anyways. They also lost Zach Hyman. That's a big loss in their top 6. But they kind of improved it. They kind of didn't. They got more depth guys. That's mostly what they did. But yeah, they lost him to Edmonton. They also lost James Greenway in a trade with Boston. I heard he's actually a pretty good KHLer. And then, of course, as I said earlier, they lost Philip Hallander in the trade with Pittsburgh for Jared McCann, who they lost anyways. So, it's kind of like Glenn in The Walking Dead, where they get him, he comes back, and then he just dies anyways. No, please don't kill me for the spoilers. Anyways, enough with the departures. Let's get into the arrivals. Your key arrivals for the Toronto Maple Leafs consist of a depth forward in Andre Kasse. I actually have him playing in the top 6 if I'm not mistaken. Michael Amadio, Alex Biega, Carl Dahlstrom, who I like by the way. Brett Seney, who was in our Devils franchise mode. They also got Pavel Gugulev from the draft. They signed him to an ELC, and I think he's probably going to play a little bit this season. So, and I like Gugulev. I used to get him a lot in my franchise modes. I don't know if that's how you say his last name, but I used to get him a lot in my franchise modes. They also acquired some other depth guys in David Kampf from Chicago, probably a solid depth center. Curtis Gabriel from the San Jose Sharks. Michael Bunting from my Arizona Coyotes. I have a picture frame of him right there. So, Brennan Manel as well from, I'm not sure where they got him from. And they also acquired Peter Mrazek through free agency to be, I don't know how you look at it, either the starter or the backup for Campbell. Depending on how you look at it. You could see him as a backup, you could see him as a starter. It's whatever you look at it to be. It's whatever you want it to be. And that's how I looked at it, to be honest. Moving on to your projected lineup for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll go through top 6 first. William Nylander, Austin Matthews, and Mitch Marner. And then you have Alexander Kerfoot, John Tavares, and Andre Kase. So, let's look at this. So, first line, Nylander, Matthews, Marner. A line that did, I don't know what just happened to me. A line that can definitely produce. Most definitely. And if they don't produce in the playoffs, you obviously have something wrong there. Second line, Kerfoot, who I think is underrated, and I'm going to say that as a non-Toronto fan. I think Kerfoot's pretty underrated. Then they have John Tavares, of course, and then they have Andre Kase, a new addition, who underrated as well in their top six. So you could argue a couple guys above him, like maybe put Ritchie, maybe put Bunting on the second line, if you're as big as a fan of Bunting as I am. But you got to take into consideration there's people down below in the prospect pool and in other areas that are going to get shots this season. So these lines will get filtered. Bottom six and the fill-ins consist of Nick Ritchie, David Kampf, and Michael Bunting. And then you have Wayne Simmons, Pierre Engvall, and Ilya Mikheyev. And then as for your depth guys, you have Marodion Amirov, Adam Brooks, and Jason Spezza. Then you have Curtis Gabriel and Nicholas Robertson. So you could argue Spezza above Mikheyev. I wouldn't blame you for that. But I put the young guy above him. But I definitely think Spezza will play this season. Absolutely. I think he probably will get probably fourth line, maybe even third line, depending on how well he plays out of the gate. Because honestly, that man is kicking ass. And then you also have guys like, of course, Amirov and Robertson, who are going to get shots in the NHL this season. Definitely, they're going to get chances. And Robertson's an underrated pick for the Calder, so he'll probably be playing third line out of the gate. Maybe they'll push Ritchie down to the fourth line, make Simmons out of the picture, depending on how they want to work those wings. Of course, that's all up to Toronto, but we'll see where they go for there. As for the defensive pairings, I have Muzzin and Brody as the first, Morgan Riley and Justin Hall as the second, Dermott and Liljegren as the third, and then you have Rasmus Sandin as your fill-in. So, I like these pairings, and the reason why I put Muzzin above Riley is because I think Muzzin is Toronto's best defenseman. I genuinely think that. I remember when he was on the Kings, and he was all right on the Kings, then he came to Toronto, and he's just developed so good. And I think adding that with that Muzzin and Brody first pairing, that's going to be a great pairing. It's one of the best pairings in the NHL. One of the most underrated as well, in my opinion. You could spread it out too. You could put Hull up to the first line and put Brody down to the second. But I think it makes sense more to put Justin Hall as a second pairing guy. I don't see him as low as a third pairing. I see him exactly second pairing. That kind of seems right for a guy like him. And Morgan Riley, he's not as good as he used to be. I'm just going to say that. And if there's anyone from the Big Four that gets traded, or if there's anyone from this team that gets traded, to be honest, it's probably going to be Morgan Riley. Genuinely honest, looking at all the contracts, it's probably going to be Riley that goes out next. Dermott and Liljegren, solid third pairing. And then, of course, Sandin is most definitely going to get chances throughout this coming season. And then as for the goaltending, you have Peter Mrazek. I don't even know. Peter Mrazek and Jack Campbell is my tandem, but you could argue Campbell above Mrazek. I wouldn't blame you for that. I love Campbell. I think Campbell is one of the most underrated goalies in the NHL. And genuinely, there's underrated guys in Toronto who say, some people say, oh, Matthews is overrated, Marner's overrated. I don't disagree with Marner. I agree with Marner. Oh, Matthews is overrated, Marner's overrated, Riley's overrated. There's underrated guys here. There's Kerfoot, there's Kase, there's Justin Hall, there's TJ Brody, there's Jack Campbell. There's so many underrated guys on this roster that people just don't think about. So it's the weird thing, too, and it's a strange thing. So when I look at this lineup, they should make the playoffs. I can't imagine they don't. But Cup, I think they can. I genuinely think they can. I think they have everything. I think they have everything they need, to be honest. Now on to my final question of this video. Do they make the playoffs? And look, with the Atlantic Division and how competitive it is, and I've talked about it so many times. I said it with the Caps. I said that the East is so competitive. Everyone's a playoff team. If not, they're heading towards one. They're definitely heading towards one, except for the Blue Jackets and the Sabres. And I think even the Sabres are going to rise up soon. If they can get all their young guys in the lineup, and then maybe they can somehow some way keep Eichel and have him stay on the team. And he gets that surgery he needs. Somehow, some way. But do I think they're going to finish first? Maybe? I think it's between them and the Boston Bruins. I don't think Tampa finishes first in their division again. I think they're going to be second at the highest. Third probably is where they're going to be. And that's where they were last year. So, I mean, this isn't a conversation about Tampa. That's tomorrow. But with Toronto, I can't imagine they don't. I can't imagine they don't make the playoffs. And if they do make the playoffs, like I said at the beginning of the video, nothing matters during the regular season. The only thing that matters is the playoffs. So thank you all for watching. For our support as of late, I really do appreciate it. We're only 7 subscribers away from 900. I really would appreciate it if you subscribe. And yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you for sticking around towards the end. And I will see you guys in the next video.